Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing what happens when an Imperial Inquisitor meets the Adeptus Mechanicus. A spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from the Warhammer 40k novel Dark Adeptus by author Ben Counter. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. And I do think I've got a bit of a sore throat coming on today, so I do apologise if my voice sounds a little different to usual. But with that said, let's waste no time and just jump straight in. Okay, so as we know, an Inquisitor's power and authority is absolute. They are in theory accountable only to the Emperor himself, invested to do whatever it takes to defend the Imperium. Every soul fears the appearance of an Inquisitor, knowing that lives could be eradicated at their whim. Even High Lords of Terror are not immune from their judgment, because the Inquisition's gaze is boundless, limitless. Or so we're told. Because as we know, technically, the Imperium is made up of two distinct empires united as one, that of the Emperor's Imperium and that of the Omnissiah's Mechanicus, the allied powers of Terra and Mars. And though the Inquisition's reach is said to be limitless, Mars of course is technically a sovereign power, its territory its own. And so this raises the question of who truly is in charge within the bounds of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Do they answer to the Inquisition or not? And well, that's exactly the kind of situation we got to see within the story Dark Adeptus. There, a Grey Knight task force led by a Justicar Alaric is accompanying an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor by the name of Nixos to the Barosis system to investigate troubling reports, and upon entering the system, it immediately becomes obvious those reports were well founded, with an entire planet appearing on the edge of the system where there shouldn't be one. And of course the Inquisitor moves his vessel in closer to investigate. There's an unusually dense asteroid field around the planet, making closer approach and any real detailed scans impossible. However, it appears to have a breathable atmosphere, despite being highly polluted, and it has high mineral deposits below the surface, with high radiation readings where instead it should be a frozen wasteland. And so Alaric and Nixos decide the only real course of action here is to send a shuttle to navigate the asteroid field and investigate the surface. However, just as Alaric is preparing to depart, a Mechanicus vessel breaks out of the warp on the system's edge, introducing itself as the Adeptus Mechanicus explorator ship Exemplar, under the command of an Archmagos Serpentis, and demanding complete jurisdiction of the system, in accordance with the Treaty of Mars. Inquisitor Nixos immediately contacts the Justicar to inform him of a problem. However, before he can explain exactly what that problem may be, a shuttle enters onto the loading bay, deafening the Vox communication, bearing the symbols of the Adeptus Mechanicus upon its side. A deck officer strode towards the interloper craft, hand on his dress sword. "You," he yelled up at the ship. "I don't see this damn thing on the docking manifests. Explain yourself." A dozen turbo lasers trained themselves on the officer's head. He stopped in mid-flow and took a step backwards. "I think this is our problem," said Alaric. "Follow me." As Alaric and his marines walked towards the shuttle, a ramp unfolded from its side. Thick, purplish incense billowed out, followed by a detail of 20 tech guard, their faces hidden behind the reflective visors of their helmets. Alaric recognised the tech guard uniforms and distinctive pattern lasguns. They were the standing army of the Adeptus Mechanicus, their regiments raised to defend the Mechanicus' forge worlds. 2 tech priests followed behind the soldiers. They were holding the censer poles that were the source of the incense. The tech priests seemed mostly human, suggesting they were lower-ranked members of the clergy. The priest behind them was clearly something totally different. The delegation was led by a creature that could only be called human with a great deal of charity. He moved as if he wasn't walking at all, but gliding, as if his long Mechanicus robes hid some strange motive attachment instead of legs. He had 4 arms, 2 with what looked like silvered and intricately engraved bionic hands, and 2 ending in bunches of data spines and interface units. His head was the most bizarre of all. He had large, multifaceted insectoid eyes, and his mouth was hidden by a heavy metal collar with a series of slits cut into it, through which he presumably spoke. There was not one scrap of biological flesh visible on him. The tech guard fanned out into a semicircle to let their master through. The lead tech priest looked around for a moment, and his inhuman eyes settled quickly on Alaric and his squad. "Excellent," said a clearly artificial voice. "You are a representative of Inquisitor Nixos. I represent the Adeptus Astartes chapter of the Grey Knights." "I see. By your heraldry I surmise you possess the rank of Justicar." The voice was programmed with a slightly aristocratic accent. "It is unlikely you are in command of Imperial forces here. Please direct me to someone who is. I should like to know who you are first. Forgive my manners. I was unable to bring my protocol servitor with me. I am Archmagos Cephentis of the Adeptus Mechanicus, commander of the Exemplar, and senior tech priest of the Librarium Primaris on Ryza, appointed by the office of the Fabricator General to lead this reclamation mission." So, although this is the arrival of the Mechanicus sending over a ship to converse in person, there's a couple of intriguing signs shown here. Firstly, Inquisitor Nixos classifies this as a problem, and that immediately lets us know that there has to be some kind of grey area here. Because an Inquisitor is an Inquisitor. It shouldn't matter who or what shows up. They do what they want, when they want, by inquisitorial right. It's only really another Inquisitor that can be classed as a problem generally. Someone, of course, with equal right and power. Yet here, the Mechanicus are an immediate problem with their arrival. Secondly, the Archmagos clearly knows who the Grey Knights are. A chapter who, let's not forget, is one of the Imperium's most closely guarded secrets, where mortals encountering them face having their mind wiped out, or even worse. Yet here the Archmagos not only knows who they are, but he can identify the rank of Alaric just by a glance at his armour, knowing that he also won't be in command. So that gives us a glimpse of how differently the Mechanicus operates, and really is a great example of how they treat the Imperium's rules and regulations very differently to how the Imperium would like. One of the greatest secrets of the Inquisition, known only to a select few across the Imperium, and it's known in detail by the Archmagos here. Senior or not, that's a surprising piece of information. And then, the use of the term reclamation also lets us know right away that the Mechanicus have already decided on their course of action. "Reclamation," said Interrogator Hawkspur, looking almost ridiculously small next to the fully armoured Alaric. She didn't seem in the least bit fazed by Serpentis's bizarre appearance. "This is an Ordo Malleus investigation. The Holy Orders of the Emperor's Inquisition have authority over this planet and everything pertaining to it." "You misunderstand me." Serpentis held out one of his more humanoid hands, and an attendant tech priest handed him a data slate. The slate screen glowed purplish, with an image of Borosius Septium. "You are Interrogator Hawkspur, I believe. You yourself sent the specifications of this planet to the Sector Librarium, requesting identification. That request has been fulfilled. The world you have inaccurately named Borosius Septium is a forge world, a possession of the Adeptus Mechanicus, according to the Treaty of Mars. I am therefore here to lead the mission reclaiming it, according to the orders of the Fabricator General. The inquisitorial mandate supersedes all other authority, including the Treaty of Mars," said Hawkspur crossly. "You may well be correct. While you debate the legalities, my men will be conducting an examination of the planet." "Forgetting the rules," interrupted Alaric. "Anyone who goes down there may not come back. We're looking at a moral threat on the planet. The Mechanicus can't deal with something like that on their own." "Your concern is appreciated," said Serpentis, "but there is little a fully armed explorator mission cannot cope with. Now, if you will excuse me, I had hoped to extend Inquisitor Nixos the courtesy of explaining the authority under which I operate. But if that courtesy is not going to be reciprocated, then I shall return to my ship." Hawkspur glared at the deck officer, who was still being tracked by the craft's turbo lasers. "Not without deck clearance, sir," he said. "And I'm afraid I can't give it to you, so you'll have to explain yourself to the captain." "This craft and this planet belongs to the Adeptus Mechanicus," said Serpentis sharply. "If you cannot comprehend this, then I certainly hope your captain will be less obtuse. You will take me to him, and hope that he extends me the respect for my authority that is due." So, we can see the Mechanicus clearly don't view the Inquisition as a boundless power, and at the very least, are fully aware that they can exploit this relationship with the Imperium as the grey area that it is. And how crazy is that? For all the bravado and absolutes of the Inquisition, it's quite clearly not black and white when it comes to dealing with the Adeptus Mechanicus. That the Magos is clearly comfortable in saying, "You might be right, but you're going to have to debate it. Establish if you truly do have the power over us." And that the orders of the Fabricator General allow him to conduct himself as he sees fit on Adeptus Mechanicus territory. Again, it's just an unbelievable piece of revelation that it is not clear across the Imperium. And it really makes a bit of a fool of the Inquisition. Sure, a show of force by the Inquisition could perhaps resolve the matter, but trying to use pure force against the Mechanicus, of all people, is not the smartest idea. And so, it's far more likely something you'd see ending up in the debating chamber of the High Lords of Terror, being ultimately swept under the rug as a misunderstanding. The big grey area of unknown remaining. The Inquisition believing they have unlimited power and reach, and the Mechanicus knowing that they could use the Treaty of Mars, also known as the Treaty of Olympus, simply when they want to cause confusion, get what they want. And it all really shows how tenuous that Grand Alliance can be at times. How truly separate the views and intentions of Terra and Mars can be. And this is perfectly summed up in the meeting of Inquisitor Nixos and Archmagos Sephentis, with the Inquisitor, unbelievably, having to compromise. Something, as we know, an Inquisitor never usually does. "I propose a compromise," said Inquisitor Nixos. Rear Admiral Horsegeld's personal quarters took up several rooms of cold, dressed stone, piously furnished with solid hardwood and adorned with icons of the Imperial Creed. Nixos had called the meeting in Horsegeld's private chapel, well away from any of the crew. He had Hawkspur by his side, along with Hortsgeld and Alaric. Archmagos Sephentis and the tech priest Thalassa, a relatively unaugmented female tech priest who attended him, represented the Adeptus Mechanicus. If Nixos was unnerved by seeing his 100-fold reflection in Sephentis' insectoid eyes, he did not show it. "Arguing will get us nowhere." Unusual words for an Inquisitor, said Sephentis, and in the circumstances probably the wisest. "I am glad we got off to a good start then," said Nixos. "But first, I need to know what you found at the Sector Librarium. Am I to understand you are asking as an Inquisitor?" "You are. Very well." Sephentis, Alaric guessed, was well aware that refusing to answer an inquisitorial interrogation could be met with whatever punishment the Inquisitor could devise. The planet in question is named Chironia. It disappeared a little over a century ago, following an investigation into the potential of tech heresy among the lower ranks of its tech priests. "You are certain?" "We are. Chironia is a forge world, according to the principles of the Treaty of Mars, and is owned in its entirety by the Adeptus Mechanicus. Hence our insistence that we are to conduct any investigations. The Treaty of Mars is nowhere accepted as superseding inquisitorial authority," snapped Hawkspur. "Perhaps this is true," replied Sephentis, whose voice seemed programmed to sound condescending. "But the time taken to ascertain this for certain is time none of us have. Hence my proposal," said Nixos. "A joint mission." "Under my command, of course," said Sephentis. "Unacceptable. Interrogator Hawkspur will represent me on the ground. Justicar Alaric will be in operational command. The mission shall be attended by myself, Tech Priest Thalassa, and a detachment of Tech Guard troops." "Agreed. And the Exemplar will be under my command as part of the fleet," interjected Hortsgeld. "Very well. My flag captain Magus Corvellian will accommodate you." Sephentis' voice was as calm as ever, but Alaric guessed that Sephentis realised he was getting about as good a result as he could have hoped for. "Again, honestly, you've got to credit the Adeptus Mechanicus here. It's an absolute masterclass of getting what they want. They know the Inquisition has unlimited power, that they can do whatever they want in the Emperor's name anywhere in the galaxy. But they also know they can use the Treaty of Mars, aka the Treaty of Olympus, to muddy the water, make people question. And that's exactly what they want to do. Against a novice Inquisitor, perhaps outright getting their own way. Against a seasoned one here such as Nixos, knowing that they may be able to get a compromise and a joint venture, when in truth they probably have no right to one. So you've got to take your hat off to them here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The more I read of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the more I really love them. The tech priests of Mars can just be so manipulative, so focused on just getting what they want, as they do here. Again and again, we saw Sephentis mention the treaty, making sure it was forefront within the Inquisition's mind. adding that element of doubt that maybe, just maybe, the Mechanicus may be right, making the Inquisition want to avoid any unnecessary time wasting, debating about who truly has the power here. And notice, Serpentis never once said the Inquisition can't and doesn't overrule the treaty. In fact, he at multiple times agreed, but he cleverly emphasised how they'd have to make sure, hinted on it being a lengthy process, making the likelihood of cooperation all the more possible. You may well be correct. While you debate the legalities, my men will be conducting an examination of the planet. And again, perhaps this is true, replied Serpentis, whose voice seemed programmed to sound condescending. But the time taken to ascertain this for certain is time none of us have. It's just brilliant. It really was. An absolutely fantastic little scene, and an absolute masterclass by the tech priest in manipulation. And let's not forget, this is against an Imperial Inquisitor. It all really showcases the fundamental flaw in the Inquisitor's so-called total power. How, while that may work on paper, encountering other true power out there makes things far more difficult. Such as the realities of the High Lords answering to them, for example, when we know the High Lords of Terror have faced down the Inquisition before. And this particular example truly shows how separate the Mechanicus remains too. How they are clearly easily confident enough to oppose the Inquisition when they have to. Perhaps the lone organisation within the Imperium that can do so without trepidation. Again, it's all just beautiful. An absolute little masterclass in the interactions and diplomacy of 40k, the Imperium of mankind. And as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think of the outcome here? The cooperation? How do you think after all this time, the reach of the Inquisition could be questioned? Is it an example of the flaws the Imperium suffers? And does the Treaty of Mars contradict the power of an Inquisitor or not? And do you think it could ever bring the Inquisition and Mechanicus into conflict? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, a huge thank you to all my subscribers for your support. It truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.